Welcome back to the Golden Ancient Tales, where forgotten stories of ancient kingdoms rise again through powerful storytelling. Today, we journey into one of the most enchanting wonders ever whispered in the scrolls of history, the peaceful gardens of ancient Babylon, a realm where beauty defied the desert and nature danced among stone towers. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment, so you never miss more thrilling adventures from the ancient world. Now, settle in and let the magic of Babylon unfold. Babylon, ancient, mighty, and endlessly alive, towered like a dream carved into the desert. From the moment the sun rose, its golden rays struck the colossal walls and turned them into a shimmering fortress of light. Travelers approaching from miles away often stopped in awe, wondering if such a magnificent city could truly exist, or it was an illusion born from heat and exhaustion. The walls were said to be wide enough for two chariots to race side by side, high enough to challenge the mountains, and strong enough to withstand the fiercest armies. And beyond those walls, the legendary Ishtar Gate stood like a portal to another world. Deep blue tiles glistened in the sunlight, decorated with dragons, bulls, and lions that seemed ready to leap out and roar. To pass beneath that gate was to step into the heart of civilization itself. Inside, Babylon felt like a living tapestry. Streets burst with life. Merchants from distant kingdoms displayed spices, jewels, fabrics, and strange artifacts. Priests in sacred robes marched toward the ziggurats, their faces serene but stern. Soldiers in polished armor patrolled calmly. Scholars debated beneath the shade of palm trees. And children ran between the pillars of temples, their laughter blending with the sounds of harps and flutes drifting from the royal courtyards. Babylon was a place where dreams were not only imagined, they were built. Yet hidden beneath its glorious surface was a story few truly understood, a story born from longing, from love, and from a king who dared to challenge the limits of nature itself. At the center of this glittering empire stood the grand palace of King Nebuchadnezzar II, a man whose name echoed across continents. He was a ruler of unmatched ambition, stern in war, sharp in strategy, unyielding in leadership. But despite his victories and achievements, something weighed heavily on his heart: the quiet sadness of his queen, Amytis of Media. Amytis had grown up among the lush mountains of the Median Empire, where cool air flowed freely and green hills rolled endlessly beneath the open sky. But when she arrived in Babylon, she found herself surrounded by flat plains, hot winds, and vast stretches of dry land. Beauty existed here, yes, but it was a beauty carved from stone and sun, not from the softness of nature she had known all her life. Though she rarely spoke of her sorrow, Nebuchadnezzar saw it in her eyes. She gazed longingly at the horizon. She lingered by the small palace gardens longer than usual. Sometimes, while seated on the balcony at dusk, she would close her eyes as if trying to summon memories of home. Nebuchadnezzar, ever observant, understood. His heart tightened every time he saw her forcing a smile. One evening, as the sun dipped beneath the desert sands, painting the sky with shades of amber and crimson, the king stood beside Amytis on the palace balcony. The warm breeze stirred her dark hair, but her expression was far away, lost among the mountains she so deeply missed. "Do you not find Babylon beautiful?" he asked softly. Amytis hesitated. She did not want to wound the man who had given her everything. "It is magnificent," she said, "unlike anything I have ever known. But—" She remained silent, her eyes glistening. Nebuchadnezzar understood the unspoken words. Babylon, for all its grandeur, could not compete with the natural paradise of her homeland. No golden gate, no towering temple, no victory parade could replace the whisper of mountain winds or the scent of fresh forest air. That night, Nebuchadnezzar stood alone in the palace courtyard, thinking deeply. The torches flickered around him, casting long shadows that danced upon the stone tiles. He gazed up at the shimmering stars and made a vow to himself. "If my queen longs for mountains, then mountains she shall have. If she desires forests and flowing rivers, then Babylon will rise to meet her dreams. Nature shall live here, not beside us, but above us." A bold idea sparked in his mind, a vision so ambitious that even the gods would have paused in surprise. He would build a garden, not on the ground, not around the palace, but in the sky itself, a terraced paradise rising high above the city. trees from distant lands swaying on elevated platforms, flowers blooming where only the scorching sun had ruled before, streams of water flowing through channels suspended in the air. A living miracle, a wonder that would defy climate, space, and imagination, a sanctuary that would restore joy to Amytis's heart. The next morning, the king summoned the most brilliant architects, engineers, gardeners, and builders in the empire. They gathered in a secret chamber beneath the palace, where maps and clay models lay waiting. When Nebuchadnezzar entered, they bowed deeply. "I have called you here," he began, "to create something Babylon has never seen, something the world has never seen." He spread his hand across the table, revealing a sketch of his vision, a tiered garden rising like a mountain, overflowing with greenery. "My queen longed for her homeland. You will build it for her. You will build this." A stunned silence fell over the room. One architect blinked in disbelief. "My king, this will require massive foundations, structures capable of carrying tons of soil." "Impossible," another whispered. "How will we raise water to such heights? Who will maintain such a marvel? It cannot be done." Nebuchadnezzar's voice cut through their panic. "Nothing," he said firmly, "is impossible for Babylon." His eyes burned with determination, the same fire that had built his empire, the same fire that conquered kingdoms, the same fire that now fueled an even greater mission: love. Slowly, the architects began to study the drawings again. Engineers whispered among themselves. Gardeners imagined the plants that could thrive in such a place. And somewhere in the back of the chamber, a young engineer named Isha stepped forward. She had a reputation for creativity that bordered on madness, but her ideas often worked. "My king," she said, "I believe I can bring water to the skies." The room fell silent. Nebuchadnezzar raised an eyebrow. "Oh, and how?" Isha knelt. Pointing at a small sketch, she drew quickly. Wheels, gears, a chain of buckets powered by the movement of the river itself. A device that lifts water higher than any man has ever attempted. A machine powered by the Euphrates, unseen by the people, strong enough to feed your mountain. Nebuchadnezzar looked at her, intrigued. "Build it," he commanded. And from that moment forward, the dream of the peaceful gardens, a paradise hanging above the earth, began its journey from imagination to reality. A secret project, a symbol of love, a wonder destined to become legend. And Babylon, the city of dreams, was about to witness its greatest dream of all. In the deepest chambers of Babylon, where light struggled to enter, where the air felt thick with the scent of parchment and oil lamps, King Nebuchadnezzar II gathered the greatest minds of his empire. The stone walls echoed the soft murmurs of architects, engineers, and master gardeners who had been summoned without explanation. Each of them wondered why the king demanded secrecy, why they were brought beneath the palace rather than to the royal courts above. Then the heavy bronze door creaked open. Nebuchadnezzar stepped inside, escorted by only 2 guards. His presence commanded silence instantly. He wore a simple robe instead of his usual kingly garments, a sign that this meeting was not political, it was personal. "My lords, my scholars," he said, his voice deep and steady, "I thank you for coming. What I am about to unveil must remain known only to those in this chamber." A hush fell. Some exchanged glances. Others straightened nervously. The king moved toward a large table draped with a cloth. With a single motion, he pulled it away, revealing clay models, ink drawings, and sketches carved into wooden tablets. The room gasped. Before them lay the impossible. A model of what looked like a giant mountain, layered in terraces, covered in trees, flowers, and flowing streams. It was like nature itself had been carved into ascending steps reaching for the heavens. One architect blinked rapidly. "Great king, what is this?" Nebuchadnezzar's expression softened, the hard lines of war and rule fading slightly. "A gift," he said. "A gift for my queen, Amytis." He placed his hand upon the clay model, as though touching the dream itself. She misses her homeland, the gentle hills, the cool breeze, the sound of water moving freely through green valleys. Babylon's beauty cannot soothe her sorrow. So I will bring her homeland to her. He paused. This will be her paradise. The architects stared. The engineers swallowed hard. The gardener's eyes widened with wonder. One of the senior architects stepped forward. He bowed respectfully before speaking. "My king, to build such a structure, the foundations must support unimaginable weight. Water, soil, trees, terraces of stone. This is beyond anything we know." Another added, "Even with the strongest bricks, the pressure could break the platforms. A garden on the ground, yes, but a garden in the air." The king raised a hand. "You will find a way." A nervous murmur rippled through the chamber. Then came the second challenge. Water, a master engineer, old and wise, cleared his throat. "Water cannot rise. It flows only downward. To lift it to such heights, even if we create channels, how will it travel upward? We are fighting the laws of nature itself." Nebuchadnezzar's gaze sharpened. "Nature may set laws," he said, "but men shape kingdoms. We shape destiny. Babylon has built wonders before. We will build another." Still, the silence that followed was heavy with fear and fascination. Then, almost timidly, a voice spoke from the back. "My king, if you will allow me." It was Isha, the young engineer known for her daring designs. She stepped forward, clutching a small wax tablet. Nebuchadnezzar motioned for her to continue. With confidence slowly growing in her voice, Isha knelt and drew a quick diagram. Wheels, rods, a chain of clay buckets rotating in a continuous loop. "This," she said, "is a device I have imagined, a machine that uses the river's force to lift water upward. The Euphrates pushes the wheels, turning them. As they turn, the buckets rise, carrying water up the terraces." She paused, her eyes shining. When one bucket empties, another rises behind it. Water becomes endless, flowing, living. The room was stunned. One engineer scoffed. "Impossible. A machine that fights gravity." Isha met his gaze boldly. "Not fights it, redirects it." Another challenge. "The mechanics would require precision beyond what we've ever built." "Then we learn," she replied firmly. Nebuchadnezzar's lips curled into a rare smile. She reminded him of Babel's spirit. Ambitious, fearless, hungry for new. He leaned forward. "Isha, build your machine." Shock rippled across the room. Some eyes widened with admiration. Others narrowed with jealousy. The king then addressed all present. "You will keep this project secret. The people must not know until the garden is complete. Do you understand?" Everyone nodded. He continued, "This structure will rise near the palace. Terraces upon terraces, strong as mountains, green as the lands of Media. A place where water flows in the sky. A place where my queen may smile again." For the first time, the architects looked at the model not with fear, but with a spark of excitement. At that moment, the dream became a mission. Just before dawn the next morning, the hidden project launched. Workers were quietly moved to the rear palace grounds. Piles of bitumen, lead, stone blocks, and timber were transported under the watchful eyes of trusted guards. The public noticed a movement, but assumed new palace expansions. Only those in the king's circle knew the truth. Isha took command of the river's edge, where she began designing the massive water lifting system. She worked tirelessly, sketching new mechanisms each day, carving wooden gears, testing bucket chains, and adjusting wheel angles. Her hands were constantly stained with clay and oil, her hair often tied up, sometimes falling loose when frustration struck. But she never stopped, not even once. Meanwhile, the architects planned the terraces, pillars thick enough to hold entire forests, platforms layered with waterproof materials, hidden corridors for engineers to inspect the water channels, archways to support the rising layers. Gardeners traveled far to collect seeds, saplings, and vines, some from Media itself, secretly imported to surprise Queen Amytis with a sense of home. The king visited often, offering guidance and encouragement. To him, this was no ordinary project. It was the beating heart of his devotion. He told them, "The world will remember this as more than stone and water. They will remember it as love made visible." Then, with secrecy, rumors grew in the city. Some whispered the king was building a new fortress. Others said a new temple. A few wondered if the king planned to build a tower to reach the gods. But none could imagine the truth. In the palace chambers, Amytis remained unaware. She saw only the results of her husband's kindness, the extra servants attending her gardens, the birds brought from her homeland, the quiet presence of the king when she felt lonely. But she did not know that outside her window, a miracle was rising stone by stone. Weeks turned to months. The terraces grew higher, wider, stronger. The foundations were so thick that they could withstand an earthquake. Channels were carved carefully, ready to receive the lifeblood of the garden, water. And one afternoon, as the sun lit the river like molten gold, Isha's machine turned for the first time. Wood creaked, gears groaned, the wheels spun. Then a bucket rose from the river, full of shimmering water. Another followed, and another. The workers gasped. Isha's heart pounded. Water flowed upward toward the sky. Nebuchadnezzar, watching from the bank, whispered with awe, "Let the mountains rise." And the peaceful gardens marched one step closer to becoming the greatest wonder the world would ever know. The sun rose slowly over Babylon, casting a warm glow across the busy city. But while ordinary life continued, merchants shouting prices, chariots clattering over stone roads, priests singing mourning hymns, something extraordinary was happening behind the palace walls. A structure unlike anything the ancient world had ever seen was rising, higher and more magnificent each day. To most citizens, it appeared as a massive construction site. Workers carried enormous blocks of limestone. Wooden scaffolds climbed like skeletal giants. Ramps slanted upward in dizzying angles. But those who labored under the king's confidential order knew the truth. They were building a mountain. Not a mountain from nature, but one crafted by human hands, ambition, and love. The first terrace was already complete. Thick stone columns supported a platform wide enough to hold an orchard. The architects had reinforced it with layers of bitumen and lead to prevent water from seeping through. The workers marveled at the sturdiness. One tapped the foundation and said with pride, "This isn't a garden. It is a fortress of nature." Above the first, the second terrace rose. It required thousands of men pulling ropes, pushing slabs, guiding spirals with beams into place. Sweat poured from every brow, even from the experienced builders who had erected temples and walls before. This project pushed them beyond anything they had attempted. "What are we building?" whispered a young worker one afternoon. His companion wiped dust from his forehead and replied, "Something for the gods, I think." But Isha, always present, always sketching, always adjusting her designs, overheard them and smiled. "No," she corrected gently, "not for the gods. For a queen and for a king who loves her." The workers exchanged glances but didn't question further. They admired Isha deeply. She moved with purpose, her eyes always scanning the structure, calculating the angle of beams, the weight distribution, the water channels. Whenever she passed, the laborers straightened, eager to impress the woman whose mind seemed to hold the entire project. While the terraces climbed toward the sky, Isha worked tirelessly on her water-lifting device. Near the riverbank, enormous wheels were being assembled, some taller than 2 men. Their wooden spokes were carved precisely to capture the power of the Euphrates. Bucket chains stretched like mechanical serpents, dipping into the river and rising in perfect rhythm. Every piece needed to interlock flawlessly. A single mistake could cause the buckets to jam, the wheels to splinter, or the entire lift to collapse. Isha's nights were spent by flickering lamplight. She ran tests, repaired misalignments, redrew designs, and whispered to herself calculations only she understood. One night, as she tightened a rope around a wheel, her assistant approached. "Isha," he said softly, "you haven't slept." She shook her head. "Sleep can wait. Babylon's dream cannot." "But what if the machine fails?" he asked, voice trembling. Isha paused. Her gaze drifted to the terraces rising in the moonlight. "Then I fail the king. I fail the queen. And I fail myself." She clenched her jaw, so it will not fail. Her determination spread to everyone around her. Even the river laborers worked with renewed purpose, driven by her unshakable will. The breakthrough came on a day when the heat pressed down like a heavy cloak. Workers gathered around as the first test began. Isha stood at the front, hands trembling slightly, not from fear but from anticipation. Nebuchadnezzar himself arrived, flanked by guards but with eyes fixed only on the machine. "Proceed," he commanded. Isha nodded. "Begin turning the wheels." The men pushed with all their strength. The wheels groaned, then started to move, slowly at first, then faster. The first bucket dipped into the river. Nebuchadnezzar leaned forward. The bucket rose. People gasped. Then another. A chain of buckets lifted water higher and higher until, at last, the first splash of water poured into the stone channel above. A cheer erupted, echoing across the river. Isha felt her throat tighten with emotion. She bowed deeply to the king, but Nebuchadnezzar surprised her by placing a hand on her shoulder. "You have given Babylon a miracle," he said quietly. Isha swallowed. "The miracle is yet to come, my king. This is only the heartbeat. The garden will be the breath of life." With the water system working, the terraces came alive. Gardeners arrived with baskets of soil. Some carried on wagons. Others hauled in sacks over their shoulders. They poured the earth across the terraces, creating deep beds capable of nurturing trees. Seeds from Media, Queen Amytis' birthplace, were planted first. Cypress, juniper, pine, wild lilies, mountain roses. These plants had never grown in the Babylonian climate before. Yet here, on these engineered terraces with flowing water, they found a new home. The gardeners worked endlessly, digging channels for irrigation, planting saplings in careful rows, shading delicate flowers from harsh sunlight, building trellises for creeping vines, bringing in birds that could help the plants thrive. Soon, slender palms swayed on the lower terrace. Vines hung like emerald waterfalls from the second. Bright flowers began to burst in vibrant reds, yellows, and blues, colors the desert had never known. At dusk, when the wind blew through the terraces, it carried fragrances so soft and sweet that even the palace guards paused to breathe them in. Rumors exploded like wildfire. Farmers claimed they saw trees floating in the sky. Merchants whispered that the king was building a secret paradise. Children boasted that they had peeked through cracks in the walls and seen birds dancing among the clouds. A group of elders debated in the marketplace. It must be a military structure. No, a temple for the gods. Fools! Can't you smell the flowers at night? Though no one knew the truth, excitement filled the city. Babylon was no stranger to achievements, but this was something else, something divine. One evening, Nebuchadnezzar ascended the highest terrace. The garden glimmered around him, pools reflecting sunset, vines swaying gently, birds chirping lightly among branches. Isha approached humbly. "My king," she said softly, "the terraces are nearing completion." He gazed across the breathtaking landscape. Water trickled through channels carved with delicate patterns. The sound was soothing, almost musical. The air felt cooler, cleaner, alive. Nebuchadnezzar whispered, "Amytis will think she has stepped into the heavens." He exhaled, letting the sight wash over him. "This," he said, "is the future of Babylon." Isha bowed, her heart swelling with pride. She had helped build not just a structure, but a dream, a mountain born from devotion, a paradise crafted from stone and water, a wonder destined to echo through history. And soon, it would be time to reveal it to the queen. As the sun drifted gently across the Babylonian sky, the hanging gardens came alive with the sounds of morning. Chirping birds, trickling streams, and the soft rustle of leaves stirred by the desert breeze. But behind this serene paradise stood a small group of dedicated individuals, the unsung heroes who preserve its beauty, the keepers of the gardens. These keepers were not merely gardeners. They were artists, engineers, dreamers, and protectors. Every stone, every leaf, every fragrance drifting through the air existed because of their devotion. Though the garden appeared effortless and natural, it was in fact a masterpiece requiring constant attention. At the head of this group was Malik, a wise and patient man whose family had tended the palace grounds for generations. He possessed an extraordinary understanding of plants, how they breathe, how they bend toward the sun, how water moved through their roots, and how the desert heat tested their strength. His eyes were always calm and his footsteps silent, as if he feared disturbing the harmony of the paradise he cared for. Each morning, before the royal household awoke, Naba Malik walked the terrace platforms, inspecting every level. He whispered to the vines that curled along the stone columns, checked the moisture of the soil with his fingertips, and pressed his ear to the irrigation pipes to listen for the faintest blockage. His presence alone brought a sense of peace to the workers around him. Under him served a diverse team, each skilled in a different aspect of maintenance. Tara, a young woman with unmatched knowledge of flowers, tended to the roses brought from Persia, the lotus that floated in shimmering pools, and the blue lilies that thrived only under her caring hands. Aramu, the engineer, was responsible for the water wheel system that lifted water from the Euphrates. Without him, the lush terraces would quickly turn to dust. He spent his days adjusting wooden gears, tightening ropes, and checking the bronze buckets that carried life-giving water to the highest levels of the garden. Beliti, the keeper of exotic plants, had traveled with caravans from India and Egypt. He knew how to mix special soils for foreign trees, how to calm stress plants with herbs, and how to shade the young saplings from the harsh Babylonian sun. Together, they worked silently, rhythmically, like the steady pulse of a living being. The gardens themselves were a marvel that demanded endless coordination. Each terrace required a different climate. The lower levels were humid and warm, perfect for ferns and creeping vines, while the upper terraces received full sunlight, ideal for tall date palms and fig trees. Maintaining these microenvironments was an art in itself. Every day, Tara would gather the wilting petals and place them into woven baskets. Nothing went to waste in the gardens. Wilting plants were turned into compost, fallen leaves became mulch, and even the soft petals were sometimes used in the perfumes prepared for Queen Amytis. Meanwhile, Aramu adjusted the flow of water, so that the streams never overflowed or dried out. He would listen carefully for the gurgle of water rushing through the clay pipes embedded within the walls. Naba Malik had taught them that a garden was a reflection of the world, delicate, balanced, alive. A disrupted balance could turn paradise into ruin, and so the keepers treated the gardens with reverence, almost like a sacred temple. The keepers' bond with the gardens was so deep that they could sense trouble before seeing it. When a single leaf turned yellow too quickly, Tara would know. When the water pressure in the pipes changed slightly, Aramu would detect it. When a foreign plant struggled to adapt, Beliti would feel like a discomfort in his own chest. One evening, as the shadows lengthened and the sky turned golden, Naba Malik gathered his team in the central courtyard of the gardens. His face was thoughtful. "Remember," he told them, "these gardens are more than stone and water and trees. They are a promise. King Nebuchadnezzar's promise of love to Queen Amytis, and a symbol of Babylon's power and compassion. If we fail, the symbol fades. If we succeed, it thrives for generations." The keepers bowed their heads, understanding the weight of their duty. Together, they returned to their work, moving gracefully among the leaves and columns as the night settled around them. In the gentle glow of lanterns, they continued their silent tasks, ensuring the paradise of Babylon would bloom again with the next sunrise. The people of Babylon often spoke of the gardens as a wonder gifted by the gods, but only the keepers knew the truth. The gardens survived not by divine magic, but through human devotion. And day after day, their devotion shaped the most peaceful sanctuary the ancient world had ever known. The early morning sun cast a soft golden glow across Babylon as Queen Amytis walked slowly along the highest terrace of the hanging gardens. The fragrance of blooming jasmine followed her, carried on a gentle breeze that rustled through the palms above. Though she lived in Babylon for several years, every dawn spent in the gardens felt like a fresh breath of life, a bridge between her distant homeland and the empire she now called home. Queen Amytis came from the rugged, green mountains of Media, where tall pine forests kissed the sky and streams flowed freely across cool valleys. Babylon, by contrast, was a land of dust and heat. When she first arrived, the endless stretch of flat plains had made her heart ache. She missed the scent of mountain soil after rain, the sound of wind passing through cedar trees, and the comfort of her mother's garden. King Nebuchadnezzar had noticed the sadness in her eyes, and in an act of devotion unmatched by any ruler, he ordered the construction of the hanging gardens, a living masterpiece designed to bring the mountains to Babylon. But today, the queen sensed something different in the air. The keepers moved about with unusual excitement. Terra carried baskets, overflowing with colorful petals. Aramu was polishing the bronze fittings of the water channels until they gleamed. Even Nabamalik, calm as ever, appeared to be preparing for something special. When the queen approached him, he bowed deeply. "Your Majesty," he said gently, "we invite you today to see a special surprise, something prepared in your honor." Her eyes widened with curiosity. She followed Nabamalik down a winding stone path shaded by vines heavy with purple blossoms. The air grew cooler as they descended to a newly restored terrace where soft light filtered through the leaves. When they reached the entrance, Terra stepped forward and opened a curtain of woven reeds. Inside lay a spectacle the queen had never seen before in Babylon, a miniature mountain valley, lovingly recreated by the keepers. The terrace floor had been shaped into gentle slopes. Small streams trickled down over smooth stones, weaving between clusters of ferns and flowering shrubs. Rare trees from her homeland, pines, junipers, and fragrant mountain roses, stood proudly in the corners. The air carried the fresh, cool scent of the Media highlands. Queen Amytis gasped softly. Her hand rose to her chest as her eyes shimmered with emotion. These are the plants of my mother's garden," she whispered. "Yes," Nabamalik replied. "We gathered seeds from traders traveling through the Zagros Mountains. Some were difficult to grow in our climate, but the keepers worked tirelessly to nourish them. This is our gift to you." Terra stepped forward and gently placed a delicate blossom in the queen's hand. "This rose," she said, "was the first to bloom, and we named it the Queen's Dawn." Amytis smiled, touched by the gesture. She walked slowly into the recreated valley, running her fingers along the soft needles of the pine trees and letting the cool water slip between her fingers. Memories returned, her childhood, her homeland, her family. For a moment, she felt as if she had stepped through time. Then, in the distance, she saw another surprise. A small pavilion made of cedar was stood at the end of the terrace. It was carved with scenes of mountains and rivers, symbols of her heritage. The pavilion's roof was draped with flowering vines that created a cool shade within. Inside lay a finely crafted throne-like chair, embroidered with mountain patterns. The queen turned to Nabamalik. Did the king? Before she could finish, King Nebuchadnezzar himself appeared behind her. He stepped forward with a warm smile. "It was time," he said gently, "to give you not just a garden, but a piece of your home." Amytis's eyes filled with tears, not of sadness, but gratitude. She approached him and placed her hand on his. "You have rebuilt more than a garden," she said softly. "You have rebuilt my heart." He guided her toward the pavilion, where she sat surrounded by the sights, scents, and sounds of her homeland. Musicians arrived quietly, playing gentle melodies on harps. Birds, brought from northern regions, sang sweetly in the branches. Nebuchadnezzar looked around the terrace with pride. Every stone, every plant, every sound reflected his devotion. Around them, the keepers stood quietly, satisfied that their work had brought joy to their queen. As she gazed upon the miniature valley, Amytis whispered, "This place, it is a treasure of peace, a sanctuary." "Yes," the king replied, "and it exists because you inspired it." The queen spent the rest of the morning exploring her new sanctuary. She traced the paths with wonder, pausing often to breathe in the scent of the pines or listen to the calming murmur of streams. This terrace would become her personal retreat, a symbol of love carved out of stone and nurtured with human care. As the sun rose high and its rays illuminated the terraces above, Queen Amytis felt something she had not felt since leaving her homeland. She felt complete. And from that day onward, the gardens became more than a royal marvel. They became a story of love, dedication, and the hope that even the farthest of distances could be bridged through compassion. The sun dipped low over Babylon, painting the sky in shades of amber and crimson. The mighty city, heart of an empire, glowed beneath the fading light, its towers rising like ancient giants guarding the horizon. Among them, the hanging gardens shimmered with their green terraces, cascading vines, and sparkling pools. Yet beneath the beauty of the evening lay an unsettling tension. one that rippled through the palace corridors and whispered through the leaves. For weeks, rumors had spread across Babylon like a desert wind. Whispers of foreign rebellions, of distant kingdoms plotting against Nebuchadnezzar's throne, of envoys arriving with grave messages. Even the keepers of the gardens felt the shift. Birds that once sang freely now fluttered nervously among the branches. The air, usually fresh and perfumed, carried a heaviness as though waiting for something to shatter. Queen Amytis sensed it too. Her peaceful valley terrace, gifted by the king and crafted lovingly by the keepers, felt strangely quiet. She sat inside her cedar pavilion, running her fingers gently across the petals of a mountain rose. Though the blossoms grew beautifully under Nabamalik's care, they did little to ease her spirit today. It was the king. Nebuchadnezzar had grown distant lately, withdrawn into meetings with generals, astronomers, and advisors. He walked with a weight on his shoulders, heavier than the crown he carried. As the garden's soft breezes brushed against her face, Amytis whispered a silent prayer that the fears of her people would fade with the night. Just then, hurried footsteps echoed from the stairway. Terra appeared, her usually bright expression replaced by worry. "My queen," she said, bowing quickly, "the king has summoned a council to the high tower. The guards say it concerns the northern borders." Amytis stood immediately. "Is he safe?" "For now, yes, but the skies are changing." The queen looked out beyond the terrace, and her breath caught. The horizon was darkening, not with the gentle fall of night, but with giant towers of storm clouds. They rose like mountains, heavy and turbulent, swallowing the sky. Lightning flickered deep within them, brief but powerful, lighting the heavens with streaks of white. A storm was coming, and it was not just a storm of nature. Nabamalik arrived next, his robe soaked as though he had rushed through the water channels. His face, normally calm and patient, was drawn with concern. "My queen," he said, bowing deeply, "we must secure the gardens. The winds will be stronger than anything we have seen this season." As if to confirm his words, a fierce gust surged through the terraces, shaking the vines and scattering loose petals across the floor. The trees swayed violently, their shadows dancing across the stone walls. Birds took flight, their cries sharp with fear. "Is it safe for us here?" Amytis asked. "For now, but we must prepare." Nabamalik signaled to Terra and the other keepers. "Bring the shutters. Secure the upper channels. Reinforce the terrace beams." The keepers sprinted into action. Terra rushed toward the storerooms, while others tied ropes around vulnerable trees and tightened the supports beneath the hanging platforms. Amytis watched them work, admiration filling her heart. These people had tended the gardens with passion, with love, since the first seed was planted. Now they fought to protect them, as if they were protecting family. But the sky grew darker still. Thunder rolled across the horizon like the roar of a distant beast. The first drops of rain struck the terraces, soft, cool, and gentle. Then the sky opened. Lightning cracked through the air, illuminating the gardens in blinding white. The thunder that followed shook the very stones. Rain poured down in heavy sheets, drenching everything within seconds. Water splashed along the terraces, overflowing from the roofs and racing down the carved channels. Amytis struggled to shield her face as the wind whipped her hair around her. She gripped the wooden railing to steady herself, watching helplessly as the storm ravaged the plant life. The beautiful vines that once draped gracefully now thrashed wildly like trapped serpents. The delicate blossoms, her cherished mountain roses, trembled under the force of the downpour. Trees swayed dangerously, their branches bending close to breaking. "Your Majesty," Nabamalik called out, "we must get you to shelter." But she resisted. "Not until the king returns. He may already be seeking you in the inner chambers. Please, my queen, the storm is too fierce." She looked once more at the gardens, her sanctuary, her gift, her symbol of love. It broke her heart to see it suffering under the storm's rage, but she nodded reluctantly and allowed Nabamalik to guide her. They made their way through the terraces, fighting against the furious wind. Rain slapped against their skin. Stones grew slippery beneath their feet. Terra joined them halfway, helping steady the queen as they reached the safety of the inner colonnade. The moment they crossed under the stone archway, The wind shrieked through the open space behind them like a wailing spirit. Minutes felt like hours as the storm raged outside. The queen, now sheltered, paced anxiously along the corridor. Then, through the storm's roar, she heard the pounding of boots approaching. "Open the gates!" a voice called. Her heart leaped. Nebuchadnezzar. He burst into the chamber, soaked to the bone, rain streaming down his armor. His hair clung to his face, and his chest rose and fell heavily from exhaustion. Yet the moment he saw her, relief washed through his eyes. "Amytis," he breathed, pulling her into a tight embrace. She clung to him, tears mixing with the rain on his shoulder. "Are you safe?" she asked breathlessly. "Yes, but the northern tribes move against us. We must prepare for war." Her chest tightened. "Then the storm is only the beginning?" He nodded solemnly, a sign of darker days. "But we will endure." They stood together at the edge of the terrace, watching the storm tear through the gardens. Nebuchadnezzar held her close, his arm wrapped protectively around her shoulders. The storm raged on, but where fear might have lived, something stronger rose within them. Resolve. Suddenly, as lightning flashed again, Amytis noticed something remarkable. One pine tree, her tallest in the northern mountains, still stood firm. Its branches whipped violently, yet its trunk remained rooted, unyielding, defiant. "That tree," she whispered, "refuses to fall." Nebuchadnezzar followed her gaze. "Then let it be our symbol." He placed his hand gently over hers. "As long as even one branch stands," he said, "so will Babylon." The queen leaned against him, drawing strength from both the tree and the man beside her. And though the storm continued to rage, a sense of calm settled over her heart, because storms, no matter how powerful, always pass. And when they do, the world is reborn. The first light of dawn broke over Babylon, painting the city in gentle shades of gold and rose. The hanging gardens, rising like a living monument above the stone walls of the palace, glimmered in the soft morning haze. Water cascaded from terrace to terrace, carrying nutrients to the lush greenery that had weathered storms, seasons, and the passage of time. Birds chirped harmoniously, their songs echoing across the terraces, weaving together with the distant hum of the city. It was a symphony of life, a testament to the vision, dedication, and love that had birthed this marvel. Queen Amytis stepped onto the highest terrace, the breeze carrying the mingling scents of mountain roses, jasmine, and the towering pine she had known as a child in Media. She ran her fingers along the smooth bark of a tree that had been carefully transplanted from her homeland, tracing its curves as if drawing memories back to life. For the first time in years, she felt complete, her heart at peace. Babylon was no longer foreign. It was her home, because here her past and present merged. King Nebuchadnezzar appeared behind her, silent as the morning itself. He had not come alone. Nabamalik, Terra, Aramu, and Belitai, the keepers of the gardens, followed, each carrying tools, seeds, or scrolls, but all silent, giving space to the moment. The king wrapped a protective arm around Amytis, his gaze sweeping across the terraces. "These gardens," he said softly, "have survived storms, wind, fire, and fear. But they endure because of love, care, and perseverance. Just as Babylon thrives, so does the heart of our people." Amytis smiled, tears shimmering in her eyes. "And because of the keepers. Without them, none of this wonder would exist." Nabamalik bowed. "It is our honor, your majesty, to protect what your vision has created. But it is you and the king who gave the gardens their purpose." The story of the hanging gardens began to ripple throughout Babylon. Merchants traveling between distant kingdoms spoke of the floating terraces, the miraculous trees, and the streams of water defying gravity. Scholars and poets arrived to witness the wonder, recorded in cuneiform tablets, inscribing the names of Nebuchadnezzar and Amytis alongside vivid descriptions of the garden's beauty. People began to see the gardens not only as a royal gift, but as a symbol of Babylon itself, a city of ambition, innovation, and compassion. The gardens demonstrated that greatness could rise from devotion, knowledge, and creativity, not just from armies or gold. Even the children of the city, who had once whispered of magical floating mountains, now ran along the terraces with delight, learning from the keepers how to nurture the plants and respect the delicate balance of water and life. Nab-Malik gathered the keepers for a rare morning meeting at the central pavilion. They stood in a semicircle, overlooking the lush terraces, where sunlight danced on the leaves. Many years from now, Nab-Malik began, people will wonder how these gardens were built, how water flows above the earth, and how trees from distant lands thrive here. They may believe it is magic. He paused, letting the wind carry his words. But the truth is simpler. It is care, patience, and understanding. We have learned to read the language of nature itself. Terra stepped forward, holding a basket of blooming roses. And to love it, every flower, every vine, every leaf has a story. We protect them because they remind us what is worth preserving in the world. Aramu, adjusting the flow of a small stream, added quietly. And we maintain balance. Water, soil, sunlight, air, they all work together. Remove one and all falters. We cannot forget that the smallest detail can shape the fate of the whole. Bedtime, holding a delicate sapling imported from distant lands, nodded. The gardens teach patience. What grows slowly must be nurtured, not rushed. They teach humility, for even kings and queens cannot command nature. They can only guide it. The keepers looked at one another, united by years of toil and triumph. They had witnessed storms, tended saplings, and carried water through chains that seemed to defy gravity. They had been guardians of vision, and in doing so, they had become part of history. Amytis lingered on the terrace, watching water tumble down the upper channels into pools below. She thought of the day the king had revealed the miniature valley in her honor, of the first time she felt a connection to her lost homeland, and of the countless storms the gardens had survived. Each leaf, each blossom, each stone held a memory, a moment of devotion, a triumph over challenge. She turned to Nebuchadnezzar, who stood beside her silently. "You have given me more than a garden," she said. "You have given me a piece of home, a piece of hope, and a promise that even far from mountains and rivers, one can find peace." The king smiled, his eyes softening. "And you have reminded me, my queen, that even the greatest empire is meaningless without love to guide it. Babylon may endure through walls, armies, and gold, but the heart must thrive, just as these gardens do." Amytis reached out and touched the flowing water in a small stream. The droplets sparkled in the sunlight, mirroring the tears of joy she felt. She whispered a silent prayer for the future, hoping the gardens would remain a sanctuary for generations yet to come. Over time, the hanging gardens became a legend beyond the walls of Babylon. Travelers spoke of the terraces in hushed tones. Scribes recorded its marvels in clay tablets, and poets celebrated its beauty in songs and stories. Kings and rulers from distant lands attempted to replicate its wonders, yet none could match the harmony of love, engineering, and devotion that had made the gardens rise. More than a wonder of architecture or agriculture, the garden stood as a testament to the human spirit. Vision. Nebuchadnezzar dared to transform love into stone and water. Perseverance. The keepers worked tirelessly, braving storms and seasons. Harmony. Plants, water, and terraces coexisted in perfect balance. Compassion. A kingdom's ruler sought to heal a heart and honor a queen. And above all, the hanging gardens taught that greatness was not measured by conquest alone, but by the beauty one could create and the lives one could touch. On one serene morning, years later, Amytis and Nebuchadnezzar walked hand in hand to the terraces, their footsteps soft on the stone paths. Water sparkled as it flowed from the highest channel, trickling down to nourish flowers, trees, and vines. Birds sang freely, and the wind carried the fragrance of distant lands. They paused at the highest point of the gardens, gazing at the city that sprawled below. Babylon stretched endlessly, a testament to human ambition. Yet for the queen, it was not the city that held her heart. It was the gardens, a living memory of love, devotion, and dreams made real. Nebuchadnezzar turned to her. "May these gardens remain for all who come after us. Let them know that the impossible is possible, that love is enduring, and that harmony can exist even in the heart of the desert." Amytis smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "And may they remind the world that even kings and queens are happiest when they serve not just themselves, but beauty, life, and the hearts of others." The water sparkled, The birds sang, and the terraces swayed gently in the morning breeze. Above the walls of Babylon, the hanging garden stood as a living testament to vision, devotion, and love, a wonder that would echo through eternity. And though empires rise and fall and kings and queens are forgotten, the peaceful gardens of ancient Babylon endured, whispering their story to winds and inviting all who beheld them to dream.